In a landmark 10-hour judgment, the Court of Appeal echoed the High Court in ruling that President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga's flagship Building Bridges Initiative Constitutional Amendment Bill as unconstitutional. The judgment, the latest blow to the duo's quest to amend Kenya's 2010 Constitution. Tonight on Pundits Night, we look at BBI, the story that was or still is. Good evening and welcome to Pundits Night. I am Abu Bakr Abdullahi. As always, remember you can be part of this discussion. Send us a message on 22047. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Our guests tonight, so a Member of Parliament, Caleb Kositany. Professor Ben Sihanya was a member of the BBI Committee of Experts and a law lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your time tonight on TV 47.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Professor, let me start with you. Did the framers, the promoters, and the experts in which you are included get it wrong in framing the BBI bill?
Good evening, viewers. The framers and everybody involved in the drafting of the BBI bill did not get it wrong. First, let us appreciate the fact that there were 4 components of the BBI process. One, and which is most discussed because it involved a referendum and it also involved 2 court cases, at least 2 court cases. I mean, there are many, more than 3 court cases actually, is the code amendment proposals. The others were policy proposals, legislative proposals, and administrative reform proposals. And in any event, the framers did not get it wrong because even the content has not been debated in those cases. Most of the content has not been. It's only a few situations in which, for example, the Court of Appeal referred to the Ombudsman, which is a content issue, and referred to the the proposed Article 11A on shared prosperity and the economy. It's only in those 2 areas that they briefly referred to content, but content was never in dispute in the courts.
Professor,
the main focus was actually process.
All right, Professor, and just on the question of the constitutional amendment process, which was touted as though it was the heartbeat of the Building Bridges initiative, the court disagreed, terming it as illegal, unconstitutional. You say that was not a wrong framing, Prof?
No, because the court, both High Court and the Court of Appeal, shockingly, surprisingly and shockingly, did not seriously engage the question of the process of amendment, which is written in Articles 255 and 257. Instead, what the court did was to take us to academics, PhD thesis, published books by European and American scholars and an Israeli scholar, and an Indian case which has been disputed quite a lot since 1973. So you would see in any event also, the court in some cases upheld the High Court. In some cases, they overturned the High Court decision, for instance, on the question of the liability of the president. In some cases, actually, there were dissents. And in fact, in a number of those findings of the Court of Appeal, there was a dissent by 1 judge or sometimes a dissent of up to 3 judges, which means a 3-4 decision. So we cannot easily say that the Court of Appeal has fully, completely upheld the High Court, which means that a lot of issues in the Court of Appeal decision are actually appealable. And some of the most important are actually, where did the court get the basic structure doctrine? It's not in the Constitution. And they don't justify where they got it from. They got it from thesis. So if we want to reform the Constitution, should we be asking the Court of Appeal, or should we be asking scholars in America and Europe whether that's the basic structure doctrine? Because it's not well defined even by the Court of Appeal.
But Prof, as I bring Caleb to the discussion, the courts twice said the basic structure doctrine is applicable in Kenya. You are talking of thesis, and you have a right to, and you are academic yourself. If the law is evolving, and there is academia to support that, such thesis can be cited in a court of law as has been.
Yes, thesis can be cited, but I supervise doctoral thesis, masters, and undergraduate LLB thesis. And we always tell them that this is a piece of work that is largely for academic discourse. It is not prescriptive of what people should do in an amendment process. And they know that. The parameters are that this is an academic work to excite this debate, academic intellectual debate. They are not supposed to be used as manuals, the way the Court of Appeal and High Court have used these as manuals for amending the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
All right.
Without reference to the text of the Constitution, the structure of the Constitution, our own rich history.
And that thesis, Prof, just for purposes of clarity, is the Israeli professor of constitutional law, Yaniv Rosnai's unconstitutional constitutional amendment. Let me bring in Caleb to the discussion. Mheshimiwa, as professor talks of theses and their applications in as far as the law is concerned, this was more than thesis, wasn't it? It was a bill that was intending to amend Kenya's constitution, or as the judges have said, disarm the Kenyan constitution.
Well, I think, thank you very much, Abu Bakar, and good evening, viewers. I think Professor should first admit that BBI was an illegality, that BBI was a process initiated by the president and Raila Odinga, and only they know the reasons why they eventually agreed that the Kenyans require a change of the constitution. And we must accept that we appreciate our courts. We appreciate the intelligence and the wise counsel that the debate that went on during the entire process. And we appreciate the results that the judges have arrived at, both at the High Court and now at the COA, Court of Appeal. And I believe we should respect the judge's decision. We should not try and go around as if the judges don't know what they are doing. They are the best legal minds that we have. That is why they were appointed in those positions. They hold those positions on merit, not through favor or through buying their way in. They hold them on merit. One thing that we have to accept is that they brought out two fundamental key issues. The issue of public participation was enhanced both at the High Court and at the Court of Appeal, and there's no turning back on that. There's no way you can go round about on that, because BBI we never had public participation. Like the county I come from, Wasingishu County, the county commissioner who was there then was the one now picking those who would go and give their views. And they went and did it in a private hotel somewhere where none of the elected leaders from Wasingishu County was invited to that function. So it is actually a win for the Constitution of Kenya. It is a win for the Constitution of Kenya 2010. It is a win for the people of the Republic of Kenya who have been saved 90 extra constituencies that they did not ask for, that they did not yearn for, that would have added on to the government expenditure. We have saved 14 billion that would have been used for the referendum. According to the IEBC figures, they had estimated the cost at 14 billion. We have saved ourselves the chest thumping and the cell of fear and the intimidation that we saw coming on to those of us who were opposed or were reluctant to buy into the BBI
all right, Caleb.
story.
In your response, you say this is an initiative of the president and his handshake brother, political brother for now, Raila Odinga. But the president has been public of the Building Bridges initiative being his flagship program in which he intends to leave a united Kenya based on. That he has been public about. That is an intention we know, don't we?
You see, Abu Bakar, it depends on what unity is. Unless unity has changed meaning. BBI was never meant to unite this country. This country is already united. And we are happy that the country is now united under an economic discussion. Everybody now is talking about economics, and we want to tell them to shelve the BBI story. Because if you tell me, or if the president tells me that the unity, BBI was about the unity of the country, why leave out a key person from the table of discussion of BBI? We saw the humiliation of the deputy president in Bomas 1 and Bomas 2, and he was being shouted at because the people who were selected to attend Bomas were also handpicked, because they were the yes people. They were the people would ask no questions. When they are told to jump, they only ask how high, they don't ask why. So I think it's a shame that anybody would think that BBI was meant to unite this country. I personally feel very delighted that BBI is now dead and that we can ask our president to refocus on the Big Four agenda, the housing program, the creation of jobs, and taking care of the hustlers, those people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. And I think that is where we need to take the discussion.
Caleb, you say, why leave an integral player out of this? And this player you mentioned is the Deputy President, William Ruto, who even in Bomas stood to speak out his mind on the Building Bridges Initiative report. He wasn't left out.
Well, he was left out. He was only called to Bomas because they couldn't avoid leaving him out. He was called to Bomas, and I thank him for attending and for speaking out his mind. And he has been vindicated. It is now out there in the public domain that he was right on some of the key issues. And I think, Abu Bakr, I even expected that at the advent of COVID-19, the president and his handshake partner, Raila Odinga, would have taken that opportunity and says, hey guys, we have now a serious pandemic. It's not national, it is international. Let us shelve this BBI story. Let us concentrate on vaccinating all the elderly. And that would have been a key opportunity for them to have shelved this idea, unpopular idea of BBI. Right now, we are losing Kenyans. We are burying people. I have people in my constituency. A mother died on a Wednesday. The father of the family died on a Friday. We're going to bury 2 people on Wednesday, all because of issues of COVID. If we had enhanced and put forward vaccination rather than BBI, we'd be able to have saved those lives.
All right, let me bring in Professor to the discussion. Prof. Caleb also in his response, and the courts, both the High Court and the Court of Appeal, talked of the question of lack of participation. But we publicly saw the Secretariat and the BBI team get to the counties, get proposals. Were those public participation, Prof?
Thank you so much. There is no doubt whatsoever in my mind that the judges we had in the High Court, the judges we had in the Court of Appeal are some of the finest judges you would find on planet Earth. There is no doubt about that. There is no doubt whatsoever that we respect the independence and accountability of the judiciary, including reasoned judgments properly sourced from the text of the Constitution. There is no doubt that I'm on record as being one of the lawyers who have consistently protected the independence of the judiciary and represented some of the judges in difficult cases. So there's no doubt about that, and nobody can lecture me about independence of the judiciary and its accountability and respect for the judiciary. But we understand it to be independence and accountability at least in the sense of reasoned judgments that are based on the Constitution as the main reference point, not academic thesis, and based on the facts of the situation, and not, for example, not bringing in content issues which were not pleaded in the High Court or the Court of Appeal. Take the case of the question of ombudsman was not pleaded in the High Court, not in the Court of Appeal. The question of shared prosperity, proposed Article 11A, they were not pleaded there. And also, so public participation is key, and as you've said, there is a lot of evidence that there was public participation. But I think the Court of Appeal was saying that in their view, the evidence was not availed in court, which means that they were not saying that there is no public participation as such, but that according to them, there was no evidence. But there's evidence, quite a lot of it, as you know, from the word go. They talked about the continuum, the issue of the initiative being a continuum from the handshake, the communique, on the 9-point agenda. You will go to the first report of the BBI task force, which involved going to town halls, etc. You will have the validation which was done in Nairobi and in other places, and in writing, and those are some of the public participation. So I think that the public participation is important, is crucial, and I'm glad that the courts have been consistent in this country. High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court have been happily consistent that public participation is crucial. So the question here in the Court of Appeal discussion is simply that according to them, there was no evidence. But we are arguing that there was evidence, including in court papers, that there was public participation. I've had my co-panelists talk about refocusing on economy, and I understand that to be the question of handouts, because I've not seen any alternative program. It's very easy to oppose any initiative, and BBI was a reform initiative. It's very easy. The easiest thing in the world is to oppose, because you don't have any big burden. You are just shouting, no, no, no. But,
all right.
But I also heard them say, no, yes, maybe. Sometimes, yes, we want to facilitate this. So the point is, what constitutional reform initiative have they put on the table? What policy, administrative, and legislative reform initiatives? Handouts are not going to solve Kenya's intractable problem.
All right.
And lastly, I have heard and I've seen in the media that since around 2013, the deputy president has been largely on a campaign trail, and more intensely since 2017. And so that in a number of situations, now I hear that they are supporting the president's agenda. But I think that they have been launching phantom projects on a perpetual campaign, and in many situations actually even appearing to be opposition.
Professor, let me interject at that point. Government. Fair enough. We will get to the politics of economics and what's so a little bit later into this discussion. Let's stick on the question of the constitutional amendment. Prof, given that this bill was intending to amend at least 74 articles of Kenya's 2010 constitution, was it really an amendment or dismembering the constitution?
Yeah,
you are a professor of law.
Yes. For a long time, many of us thought, for some time, for about, say, from 2010 to around 2013, some of us thought that the constitution needed at least 10 clear years so that we experience it and help implement it. But what did we see from 2013? First, Chief Justice William Mutunga, who I now see focus telling us implement, as the president of the Supreme Court, failed to ensure electoral justice. That was one of the original sins. Then the Jubilee administration, in which the deputy president, William Ruto, is a cog, in fact was actually co-president between 2013 and 2017, co-president, then made so many proposed amendments to legislation which were actually undercutting the constitution. And the deputy president was part of that team, and he was not really interested in focusing on constitutional implementation, but actually how to undercut the constitution. So this dismemberment language is something that has now again been imported from European constitutional literature, which has made, according to the Court of Appeal, which has now elaborated it and without being properly pleaded in the High Court, they are now, it was an afterthought actually, it was an afterthought in this litigation, are now saying that to amend a constitution is maybe just to change a comma here or something, and that you only deal with 1 or 2 clauses and that's enough, and probably you subject it to so many questions for referendum. And there is no basis in the constitutional text for that. Amendments have always been there in this country, and many times we will present them as one bill. However, whatever the number of amendments, provided that if there are amendments that are under Article 255 of the Constitution, sovereignty of the people, etc., etc., the independence of the judiciary, then it must be through a referendum.
Point made, Prof. You're watching Pundits Night. We are talking of BBI, the story that was or still is. Keep talking to us. Time for us to take a short break. Stay with us here on Kenya's fastest growing television.
The industry in Kenya is growing in leaps and bounds. From bungalows, mansionettes, high-end apartments, all the way to mixed-use developments such as malls and mall residency. Well, how do you all break it down? Right here on TV47, we bring you The Realtor with me, Karanja Daniel, where we analyze the property industry right here in Kenya and bring you the latest from all the professionals that are involved from architects, engineers, surveyors, as well as the construction experts themselves.
Even property industry has shifted from where it was some years back.
It is very endearing to family people. Yes. Because you want your kids to grow up in a nice environment.
Real estate is an asset, a secured asset, granted a guaranteed asset.
Do not miss out every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m.
What does it take to be an alpha male? Is it by expressing your emotions?
For men, we're human beings, and we also have emotions, and we're also weak at some point.
Mimi nilienda nikaingia ndani ya maji ya bahari ili watu wasijue nalia. Ingia kidogo kitoka hivi mtu anasema ni maji, kumbe ni machozi. Machozi tu.
Is it how you treat your significant other?
You're beaten once. The man is a fool. When it happens twice and you're still there, you are the foolish one.
He gives you a house, you turn it into a home. He brings home beef, you make biryani for dinner.
By how many women you have in your corner?
I went, I banged all these other babes, and I looked at it, I was like, you know what, nah. I want Keisha, I want Sheila, I want Brenda, I want Mary. So I decided to drop her.
Well, at the men's conference, we demystify this and so much more. Join us every Wednesday at 10 p.m.
Hi kids, welcome to Kids on the Block.
Here at Kids on the Block, we learn and have fun. We teach you easy cooking skills, art time, playtime, and many more. Join us and don't miss the fun every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Welcome back to Pundits Night. Keep talking to us. Send us a message on 22047. Let's get back to our discussion. And let me bring in a Member of Parliament, Caleb Kostani, to the discussion. Mheshimiwa, you have had Professor before we went for the break. First, I'll give you a chance to respond to him.
Well, I think one thing that we need to appreciate, Abubakar and my good friend Professor Ben here, is that the drafters of the 2010 Constitution envisioned a scenario such as that we embarked on 4 years ago, to try few individuals meet and decide that because they have the power and the might, they can then decide what is good for Kenyans in terms of constitutionalism. And I think the drafters saw it, and that is why we are seeing it through the courts that the drafters had such a scenario in mind, and it is good that it has been stopped. What we need to accept and agree is that BBI, the whole story of changing the constitution, was never, ever a people-driven decision. It was a decision made by two people who went in for a handshake, and after that, it metamorphosed into a change the constitution, a constitutional moment. And that
despite millions of Kenyans appending their signature in support of it.
There is no verification process that can actually verify that those were a million signatures. And that has been said by the courts, because IEBC doesn't even have a sample of my signature. So you can scribble anything and claim it was a signature. So that process also was highlighted in the courts. But even if a million people supported it, we have seen a poll that was done recently which said 72% of Kenyans believe that the country is headed in the wrong direction. That is an indication of exactly what is happening in Kenya. So I think those who are proposing and pushing this agenda, they actually thought they had it because Uhuru was here, Raila was here, Kalonzo bought into the idea, Mudavadi bought into the idea, and I think they said, okay, fine. William Ruto may not buy in, and that's not a problem. We have these other people. But it is very important for them to learn that Kenyans have dropped the tribal lenses. Kenyans are no longer looking at people as their tribal leaders. They are looking at for a leader who has ideas, who has the feelings of the moment. The feelings of the moment of Kenyans is the economy. The feelings of the moment for Kenyans is how do we get vaccines for COVID-19, not changing the constitution.
Fair enough, Caleb. You talk of those who have fronted the amendments to the constitution. And one person who has not, and whom you also made mention of, is the Deputy President William Ruto, who on Friday, after the Court of Appeals judgment, tweeted, and I quote, God, our Heavenly Father, has come through for Kenya and stopped the coalition of the known, the mighty, the powerful from destroying our constitution. Our God helped the alliance of the unknown, the jobless, the hustlers, and struggling farmers to now engineer our economy from bottom up. End of quote. A coalition, he says, of the known, the mighty, and the powerful, in which his boss is part of, isn't it?
Well, that tweet is very clear, and Kenyans know exactly who the Deputy President was addressing. And I think it's a very honest tweet from the Deputy President, whereby he's actually exercising his democratic right, has a leader, has a God-fearing person to tell Kenyans which direction we should be going. And I think it's very important that the proponents of BBI listen to what the Deputy President is saying.
And he says that the coalition of the known, the mighty, and the powerful have been stopped from destroying our constitution.
That is exactly what it is, and we appreciate the drafters of the 2010 constitution envisaged a moment like this when the constitution will be changed. You remember, Abubakar, I don't know whether you were here in the year 1992 when President Moi was repealing Section 2A to allow for multipartism. It was just done by, we did it at a delegates conference in Kasarani. At that time I was a member of KANU, and we just, President stood and said, we want to repeal Section 2A so that we can have multipartism, and it was, by acclamation we agreed. Bam, the constitution had been changed. So I think though we have gradually grown, and I think it is too early at the moment. No single Kenyan has felt the need, or rather majority of Kenyans, the hustlers, have not felt the need to change the constitution. They feel the need to revive the economy. They feel the need to get back their businesses going. They feel the need that they need vaccination so that we can open up the country.
Fair enough,
open up the economy. And that is where we should focus.
If this is a proposal that was fronted by the president, and this is his deputy telling him off on Twitter, at least many will say that is a disregard for the president, at best, based on the phraseology of his words.
Abubakar, you know, we are all human beings, and that is why when you are at the position of leadership where the president and his deputy are, you are allowed to differ. It does not mean that the boss is always right. It does not mean that what the president says is always the gospel truth, or rather is a scripture that you must follow. The deputy president is entitled to his opinion. And if you listen to the deputy president in Bomas, I wish you would replay his speech. He had issues with the ombudsman, and he mentioned quite a number of issues that have been highlighted and have been part of the process, of the court process. I think what we need to accept is that we are in a democratic space. We thank God for this 2010 constitution. By now, I'm sure if we were in any other constitution, the deputy president would have been fired and sent home. But he is still the deputy president until another one is elected in the 2022 elections.
All right.
I am happy that today the president has affirmed that he's ready to go home. He has affirmed that he's preparing the country for elections in 2022, and that is what we Kenyans wanted to hear. So because he's been quiet on that, and that is why there was speculation whether he wants to continue, whether they talk of extending the term of parliament, and more so, and then through that also the term of the president. He has put that to rest, and we are happy. So every Kenyan, every political party should now prepare and know that we'll have elections on the 9th of August, 2022.
Enough. And let me bring Prof to the discussion. Prof, the Deputy President says that this was a product of the known, the mighty, and the powerful. You are part of that committee of experts, was it?
No, you said known, mighty, powerful. Who else apart from the president has been so mighty, so known, so powerful in the Republic of Kenya, especially between 2013 2017, taking credit for a lot of appointments, taking credit for a lot of government decisions, launching cattle dips projects left, right, center. So let's just, when did he discover that he's no longer, and his supporters are no longer known, mighty, powerful? I think if 2013 to 2017, it was the president and the president and I have decided, etc., etc. So let's be consistent. And also on this issue of constitutional amendment, did I hear that the deputy president saying that don't touch the constitution, implement it? Did I hear in 2010 the deputy president saying no, we don't want this constitution, it is 80% good, we want to amend 20%. So where is that 20? Has 20% which was wrong amended itself? So we need consistency, even on BBI. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe. So we need consistency. Leadership requires focus, steadfastness, certainty, no lies, truth in whatever.
Fair enough, Prof.
Come rain, come sunshine.
Fair enough, Prof. I asked you this particular question of whether the constituents were of the the mighty and the powerful, because there is a feeling, and some believe it is genuine and others disagree with it, that the deputy president wittingly or unwittingly has been left out, isolated in these constitutional amendment talks.
So whether you are talking about the drafters, you are talking about the promoters, you are talking about the people who voted, and we have discussed this evening, from the word ago, the people who attended the validation meetings, people who gave views, people who, the representatives in the county assemblies. I don't think that you can call all these people the known, the mighty, the powerful. It was a cross-section of Kenyans who supported this initiative as a reform initiative. And my understanding is that the initiative itself is not dead, because it has 4 components. It has, as we have discussed this evening, it's a colonial reform, administrative reform, legislative. Prof, so a lot of them can still, and these were not mighty.
Prof, the question is it a genuine concern to say that the deputy president was left out?
Left out by who? Even at the BOMAS that is being cited, at the BOMAS where the deputy president made his remarks, the president himself said, I also asked him from the word go, and he made nominations for people who are going to be part of the BBI task force. And he has not recanted that. He has not controverted that. So left out by who? At what level? And my understanding is that a deputy president deputizes the president and is supposed to be the president's principal assistant. As long as you want to keep that office, you deputize the president. You become the president's principal assistant. But if you differ on policy and on principle, then everybody knows the constitutional provisions. Everybody knows the political process. If you can't have your cake and eat it, you are in government and you are not in government. You have nominees at cabinet level, and you are the deputy president who is supposed to deputize the president, a heartbeat away from the president, as constitutional lawyers say. And at the same time, you are the chief opposition leader within government. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's just unconstitutional, it's illegal, it is immoral, it's politically incorrect.
Caleb, your response?
Well, it is important. Professor has avoided the question of the deputy president being left out. But it is very clear that that is something that is eating them up now. And I'm sure they wish they had included the deputy president from the process, from the word go. And if the deputy president had been included, there are items that were on the 73 or 74 clauses that they wanted changed, that the deputy president would not have agreed with. For the issue of the ombudsman, for example, he would not have bought into that idea. The issue of additional constituencies. We are already 290 members of parliament. We don't even know each other. And we were now going to bring in another 90, and that would have been an added some few billions to the taxpayer. So I think it is important that we accept, our professor here accepts that since the handshake, things changed. The deputy president remained the deputy president with no particular portfolio with no clear instructions from the president on what he was supposed to do. He has been humiliated. He has been left out of key decisions. He was even refused to occupy a house that the taxpayers' money have been used to renovate and make it a deputy president's residence in Mombasa. He has been, is no longer invited to the National Security Council meetings and all that. And the deputy president then decided, what was he going to do? He was going to go to those at the bottom of the pyramid. And that's why he started an empowerment program. You saw him giving wheelbarrows, giving we will come to Abubakar, let me finish. And even going to church. And we have seen today a very young fellow, a young minister, trying to castigate the spirituality of the deputy president at a church function.
All right, Caleb.
And I think people should learn to discuss their own things. Don't bring William Ruto into a discussion where he's not the main agenda. I think one of these days, Abubakar, you need to have a topic. We're discussing William Ruto today. Because every other show that is there, William Ruto finds his way into the show.
He's the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. And because of the freedom of soul expressions that we enjoy, we have to talk about the country in totality, him not excluded. You talk of the question of him being excluded, humiliated. Caleb, there are those who will say it is a self-imposed humiliation, that he started campaigning way ahead of time, defying his boss, the president, hence what he's going through.
Abubakar, I had said this before, that the deputy president is not an angel. Neither is the president. Each of them has their own minds. There are things that the deputy president has done that may not have pleased the president, and there are things that the president has done that may not have pleased the deputy president and even Kenyans. But they are elected and they were joined at the hip during the election. What we actually know is that the president is the one who vacated the camaraderie that they had with the deputy president. Once he got his handshake partner, then he thought he would now dispense with the deputy president. He no longer needed him. Ruto had helped him in 4 elections, helped him in 2002 when we were in Kanu and we lost and went to the opposition, helped him in 2013, helped him in 2017 twice. And we all know, those of us who are the insiders of Jubilee, we know the effort, the time, and the resources that the deputy put into the President Uhuru Kenyatta's election and re-election. So I think the deputy president has his right to continue serving as deputy president because he contributed to this victory. He is doing the right thing by giving the other opinion. And it is for Kenyans to agree. If the deputy president's opinion is popular with Kenyans, then so let it be. On the issue of he started campaigning early, that is a gimmick and a rhetoric that is used for those who really don't have anything on the deputy president. And it is never, first of all, he has not started any campaign. We know that the campaign period will be announced by IEBC. I think it will be 3 months to, must start from January because we'll be having party primaries by April. And then after that, the campaign period starts. So there has been no official campaign period. If going to church is campaigning, well, I don't know. If going to assist people wherever they are in need or going even to talk to residents of a certain area is campaigning, then everybody else has been doing it. And maybe not at the tempo or at the regularity that the deputy president has been doing it, but it depends on everybody's effort and energy.
All right. Prof, the Court of Appeal upheld the decision of the High Court. Given the decisions, the judgments that have been made, does this constitutional amendment proposal have a legal chance of making a comeback through the Supreme Court?
Interesting. That's a very important question. But before that, there's just this statement that I keep hearing, and especially tonight, that the deputy president helped President Kenyatta over about 4 or so elections, which is, I think, I don't want to go into the details of that, but the question that some people would ask is that, did he get anything in return? Secondly, did we know of a deputy president in 2013 to 2017 who was probably the most powerful deputy or vice president in human history? Students of comparative constitutional law and governance will tell you that never in human history have we witnessed such a situation. Not even Dick Cheney under Bush II, whereby a deputy president could be the one pronouncing government policy. The deputy president had a lot of chances to nominate cabinet secretaries and PSS, and he decided to nominate from his backyard. I'm not surprised that he thinks tribalism is not a problem in Kenya when tribalism is one of the three key problems: tribalism, corruption, and I think there's no talk in that. There's no talk in that corner about corruption. There's no talk about tribalism for convenience sake. There's no talk of how to revive the economy through policy, constitutional reform, and related administrative measures. There is only issues of handout. This is not how to govern a country.
And Prof,
so the point is, the Court of Appeal...
Just for purposes of fairness, Prof, the president himself is on record saying Kenya loses 2 billion shillings.
Yes,
just on corruption.
But I'm saying that the deputy president is not hard on the question of corruption. I said the deputy president.
All right,
the president has mentioned that, yes. But the deputy president, I think there's a time he's quoted in the media to have said that corruption doesn't affect governance, which I found totally incomprehensible. So the question that you posed was that, is there any chance in the Supreme Court? Well, I hear still people claim, and even tonight, that the Court of Appeal totally upheld the High Court. There is a chart here which shows how they determined the various issues, and where there was unanimity, where there was dissent. And dissents are very important in constitutional law. In fact, some of students of constitutional law will tell you that Lord Denning, Alfred Denning of England, and some of our judges, over time their dissent became the law and was even written into the Constitution. So the point is that, as I said earlier, the Court of Appeal upheld the High Court on some issues. In some issues, they overturned the High Court, like, for example, the question of whether the president contravened Chapter 6. They overturned the High Court. And on some issues, there were significant dissents, whether 1, 2, or 3. But let's just focus on the areas where they upheld the High Court. Even where they upheld the High Court, in some cases their reasoning was, or what lawyers call ratio decidendi, or reasoning, was different and sometimes still not easy to understand. Take the case of IEBC. IEBC, the court, both the High Court and Court of Appeal say that if the Constitution requires that the commissioners should be 3, minimum 3, maximum 9, and then the Act, IEBC Act requires that then, and the schedule, etc., require that the quorum is 5, and then you must go with the Act. Consider Article 2, and the first day in law school, we teach students that where the Constitution has provided for a minimum of 3, that means that it's okay. If the Act demands something different, then it's the Act that is null and void to that extent. And then I think that the Court of Appeal probably also forgot that in the election of the president of the Court of Appeal, the current president of the Court of Appeal, it is the same IEBC with 3 commissioners that dealt with that. Yet this is not part of the ordinary day-to-day activity of IEBC, which means that it required some policy decision. What is to be done about decisions of the IEBC from 2018 to 2021? There was an assumption that immediately there's a vacancy, so-called vacancy, you can easily fill it. It's not that easy. So there are so many issues here, whether, for example, how can you amend the Constitution through popular initiative, which is Article 255, especially at 257, but there's also 256, some clauses. How do you amend that? We are told to amend is a very limited function. We are told that otherwise you will be dismembering, borrowing from European and American authorities. Then we are also told so many things which are generally inconsistent with the Constitution. There was no commitment in the High Court and the Court of Appeal to take us through 255, 256, 257, and say, this is what they say, text. This is the procedure according to the Constitution, but then this is what other people say. You start with the text of the Constitution. For example, what is a Constituent Assembly which both the High Court and Court of Appeal said is mandatory? What is the composition? What is a Constituent Assembly in Kenya? It's not in the Constitution, it's not in any law. How is it supposed to be composed? So there are so many questions that the Court of Appeal still left hanging, that a higher court, applying its mind to the text of the Constitution with fidelity to the constitutional text, structure and history, would definitely find a different response to the issues.
But Prof, these jurists have quoted the Constitution, quoted the laws that govern this country, haven't they? They have talked of the limits to amend the powers as of Article 255, 257. They cite out the basic structure doctrine for that. They talk of IEBC, its role and functions, primarily also the observation that the delimitation function is constitutionally guaranteed under IEBC. They were, in many instances, citing the law, Prof.
Whenever they cited the Constitution, it was what we call interstitial. By the way, article that. Without setting it out, the best strategy in interpretation is what is called interpretation methodology, is that you set out the clause. Then you say, its ordinary meaning is this. But then, under Article 259 and other clauses, it's purposive, it's the intention, the spirit was it. But you start with the text and you elaborate. That is not what was done. You just throw in a clause there, then you go to Yaniv Rosnai.
So you're hopeful.
You throw in a clause, you go to Richard Albert. You throw in a clause, you go to another American, European, Israeli, or Indian authority.
So, Prof, you are
or
hopeful.
One case in Uganda.
You're hopeful that the Supreme Court will give a different verdict as of the two?
Well, you know, you cannot predict with certainty, but my understanding is that the Supreme Court, applying the interpretative methodology that the Supreme Court has developed in the past, that you start with the text, you go to the structure and the history, and you apply it. No, you don't just say we will apply it the same way both courts say, but did not apply. If you were to apply that, I am optimistic.
All right, Caleb, we are talking of the High Court, the Court of Appeal. Now the Supreme Court ODM leader is also on record saying it's time to probably move on. Is it time to move on for the promoters of the BBI?
It was time to move on long time ago. They should have listened to the intelligence report. They should have read the mood of Kenyans. I had said earlier, they had an opportunity to vacate the BBI push when they saw how chaotic the Meru rally was, and they had the best opportunity on the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, and I think surely it is time to move on. It is a little bit late for them, but I think they still have time to reorganize themselves. We have seen they've held several meetings in Mombasa, trying to find come up with a single candidate for 2022. We wish them well. We wish they can actually expedite that and give us a candidate. And I think it is also very important for them to try and listen a little bit more to those people at the bottom of the pyramid, so that they may not fall into that trap again of trying to use power and blind themselves with power to try and change the Constitution.
All right, because of the interest of time, Prof, less than a minute, your final remarks?
Move on, indeed. Move on. Many people have moved on. Everybody is moving on. Move on, and includes three key parameters. Number one is the AG executing the AG's intention to appeal. That's also moving on. It's a control right, and the popular right thing politically, and control right thing to do, because if left untouched, the Court of Appeal decision would totally make it impossible to amend the Constitution in the future. And as Jeff Kennedy said, and I paraphrase, if you make peaceful change impossible, you make violent revolutionary change inevitable. And then secondly, there is moving on politically, and the political processes are continuing. And they can also now in the short term, medium term, long term, address any constitutional or legislative reforms, administrative reforms. And lastly, move on and the electoral process, as we have both agreed as panelists, the electoral process is kicking in with a date timeline of August 2022. So that's part of moving on. We are not stuck in the mud.
All right, Professor Ben Sihana was rather of BBI Committee of